What's up guys? Today I'm going to be ranking every FNCS win from best to worst, giving my honest opinion on each meta and format at the time, so make sure to stick around to see who I put at number 1. This goes from Season X all the way up to the most recent, which was the Global Championship. Honestly, there may be a little bit of bias involved just because I participated in pretty much every single one of these grands, even have some of my own wins on here as well. Alright, so we're going to be starting off with Season X, which was the first FNCS ever. The winners of this FNCS were Zexro, Macwood, and Young Cal. There weren't too many expectations going into this Grands, just because it was the first FNCS ever. Nobody really knew what to expect. The game was, very different. World Cup just happened. This was the first of many FNCSs, and to be completely honest, I don't think there were too many favorites to win. I remember at the time, there were some really good trios. So we're just gonna watch game 1 here. I'm gonna just, see what they did. So as many of you know, this was around the same time the Zexro bandage clip.
Is he able to fight it? He gets angled, but he gets sent down. Will he be able to get back
something?
Pop a bandage! Pop a bandage! Zexro, pop a bandage! Son, please!
Wait, don't forget he has the double eliminations for the site, but it's gonna come through. Agro
He
goes
got
down.
third.
Uzi goes down 1
needs to
HP.
get third.
Son down! Son down 1!
So the meta for this Grands Finals was launch pads, shockwaves, heavy snipers. There were a lot of different crazy items at the time. As far as I'd rank this Grands, I think it's safe to say, just because of the way this was, they landed at a really good POI. They landed at Frosty Flights, I believe it was. It was a really good POI. This was the first Grands ever. Nobody really had expectations, knew what to expect. I think this could easily be a B or C tier just because it's just the first one. I think because it's the first Grands, we'll give it a B tier. So moving on into Chapter 2, the first Grand Finals of Chapter 2 was squads, and now the winners of this FNCS were Unknown Army, Kez, Stable Ronaldo, and Avery. During this Grands, I won't lie, aim assist was pretty crazy. Everyone knows Unknown Army kind of went crazy in and did the best. A lot of people say he carried this Grands, but to be completely honest, this Grands was very impressive regardless of the player. This was a good team up there, but I don't think they were favorites to win. There were a lot of good squads at the time going into this FNCS. This kind of put controller players on the map and really showed people that they can actually compete and they can, win tournaments and do crazy things in this game. So I honestly will give this an A tier just because it was a very close Grands. They messed up their last game and gave Cal and Zexro the opportunity to, win the Grands, but they still held out and won. So I'm going to give that an A tier. If they were to win their last game to win or something, I think I would give it an S tier, but I think A tier fits right for that Grands. All right, so the third Grand Final went to Zate and Saf, which a lot of people know during early Fortnite were very dominant. A lot of people look at them as the, GOATs of early Fortnite. They were a very impressive duo together, and whoever they picked up for trios or squads, they always seemed to perform well. So as far as this Grand Final goes, we don't have any video of Zate and Saf from their POV playing. The meta during this time was launch pads. I remember there were a bunch of mythics in the game. There was the drum gun. I'm pretty sure there was the boom bow. There was the minigun over at Grotto. This was a very highly anticipated Grand Finals. Sweaty Sands during this time was a really good POI. I think a lot of people had them definitely up on the list of doing well. If we're going to look at the Fortnite tracker here, we have Zate and Saf who won this in a 6-game format as well. This was a very impressive Grand Finals in my eyes just because of the way that they IGL'd and played it. I remember they played height a lot. They loved going for height. Going up against the other names during this time in prime Fortnite, I would have to say this is either an A or a B win. I'm a little bit undecided. I mean, just because it's Zate and Saf and how good they were, I feel like I'm gonna have to give that a B. So going on to Chapter 2, Season 2, which was FNCS Solo Invitational. A lot of big controller players were stepping into the scene at this time as well. So if we're to look at this screenshot itself, looking back at Chapter 2, Season 2. So if we look back and compare the amount of controller players in this, end game right here compared to nowadays, right here we have Furious, Spark G, Fired, and Roller, who were all on controller at the time. I believe Furious landed Lazy, which was a really good POI at the time. I'm not sure what his loot was or the split that he got. He has a spaz a lot of the time. He had really good mats a lot of the time as well. Going into this Grands, a lot of people were expecting a controller player to win just because of how dominant controller was during this time period. But looking at Furious's match history, he didn't seem to have any wins. He just had a lot of decent elimination kill games. But I don't think Furious was expected to win this grand finals. I'm gonna have to give Furious's win probably just a C in my books just because of the time. He wasn't really expected to win, but I also don't think that this was the most competitive era of all time in Fortnite. So yeah, I think that's just a C in my opinion. So moving on to chapter 2 season 3, this was a solo grand finals and the winner of this was Coop. I remember playing the scrims leading into this grand finals and just playing tournaments during this time. Coop was always on, he was always grinding. This was honestly the most in his career I think I saw him play the game. Also notably, controller was super dominant during this time period as well. You know, coming fresh off of the invitational win from Furious. This is backed by another controller player. You know, I honestly don't remember too much of this. The thing that I noticed Coop would do, he would use his crash pads, he would get onto decent layers, and whenever he was in a very sketchy position, he would end up playing zone with his 4 floppers, which he got guaranteed every time. I believe he landed south of Slurpee or in Slurpee itself, but he would play his floppers every single time and he would end up getting a bunch of kills from that. You know, you can see him right here playing a flopper. And here we go. A guy's coming out of zone that doesn't have loot. He dies. And crash pads were really good for getting into zone as well after you play your floppers in zone. So I think he had really good loot to win this tournament, and just from what he was doing beforehand, grinding, playing all the scrims, performing well in them. So I honestly think, you know, this is just a fair B tier win. All right. So moving on to chapter 2 season 4. Now this was a time period that a lot of people remember in Fortnite. I believe this was Stark seasons. It was just refreshing coming off of a solo event as well to finally play trios, finally play something new. So within this trio we have Day, Marrow, and Reverse. Now this was pretty much the start of their careers in my eyes. They played a few cash cups before this. I'm pretty sure they had won something. By no means did anybody expect Marrow, Day, and Reverse to win this. Marrow and Day's skill level at this time was just unmatched. I don't think there were any players close to them. They were so ahead of the meta. Their piece, everything, their aim, just the way they were playing the game was a lot different from what people would practice. They landed west of Sweaty Sands at a random split drop that didn't even have that much loot. But because of their play style, it allowed them to get, you know, eliminations, which were points, and it also allowed them to get loot off of kills that, you know, they would always get, which was almost a guarantee. There were a lot of really good teams and nobody expected Day, Marrow, and Reverse to win this. For me, I honestly think this is A tier just because it kind of changed the way people look at Fortnite. All right, so going on to chapter 2 season 5, we actually have another trios grand finals. You know, this one was won by Acorn, Jack, and Slacks. So what I remember from this grand finals is that they landed Slurpee Swamps. This was the grand finals that Zay, Saf, and Stretch were contested, so every game Acorn and them were able to go over there and clean them up, and by doing that they were able to get the RPG a lot of the time, and they were also able to get kills, surge. You know, they were just able to get everything off of that. They did have a really impressive performance throughout the entire season, you know, going into the grands. The team next to them being contested and them being able to go over there definitely helped them a lot, already on top of how good they already were. I do think this was just a fair trios win. They had a really impressive season going into the grand finals, which is maybe why I could consider it an A tier win. But if anything, I think this would just be at the top of the B tier. All right, so going into chapter 2 season 6, we have another trios grand finals. Now this grand finals was won by Day, Marrow, and Reverse. This was actually the one grand finals that I did not qualify for. The one main thing that I remember from this grand finals for Day, Reverse, and Marrow, they were obviously known as a very good team. Everyone knew how they played. They knew their play style. This was the time that they did not play any scrims at all. You know, there would be pro scrims going on. Every team that was in grand finals would be playing. Day, Marrow, and Reverse just weren't playing. They would rather play arena or they would rather play creative. They were just doing things that other teams just weren't doing. And then they go into the grand finals. It's a no movement meta, I believe. So I remember this FNCS was very close. This was the time that Scented would have been able to get his first FNCS win. Everybody remembers this clip. This was one of Mero's most iconic clutches of all time. This pretty much solidified them winning the Grands. But I honestly think this clutch cemented him as, you know, one of the greatest. So you see right here, he goes up, he grabs height. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Day ends up dying, Reverse ends up dying, and it's left to Mero. He's top 9, top 8, and he ends up getting a top 2 off this and pretty much guarantees their Grand wins. So, you know, he goes into zone, maxes this guy, they're popping meds, gets the other kill as well. You know, he's playing height now, he just sprays down, and he almost won this game, which would have been so crazy for it just being one of the last games of this Grands, and it kind of just would have been like a statement. He hits both the players 1 HP, but I think Jamper hit like a nice pump and killed him. Yeah, he gets that guy to 1, and then Jamper gets him. Or it was Threats, it was one of them. So this was the second FNCS win for Mero, Reverse, and Day. I feel like just because of how close of a Grand Finals it was, I'm gonna have to put this A tier. I think that's an A tier Grand Finals. All right, so going on to Chapter 2, Season 7. This was Solo All-Stars. The winner of this FNCS was actually Pamstu. I think this was a shocker for a lot of people. I don't think people expected Pamstu to win. He was a good solo player going into this, but there were a lot of good solo players at the time. 6-game formats in solos, anything can really happen. You know, if you have 2 to 3 bad games, you know, your entire tournament's over, whereas in a 12-game format, that's acceptable. Since nobody really expected Pamstu to win this, it was kind of just out of nowhere. And I mean, I honestly think this is, you know, bottom of B tier or just C tier, just because, you know, I honestly think I'm gonna put it in C tier. All right, so going into Chapter 2, Season 7, we have Dukes, Justice, and Users. This was a very interesting Grand Finals. Pretty unexpected, I believe. I believe this was Pepper Pad season. I think Peppers made you, you know, run super fast, and then you had pads. But there were a lot of good trios as well during this time period. This Grand Finals definitely wasn't expected for Dukes, Justice, or Users to win. Day 1 right here, look how they came out. They started with a 6th, a 1st, a 12th, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 4th. That puts you so ahead. Viewing cumulatively, they had a 28th, they messed up. 18th, they messed up. A 19th, they messed up. But then they had a 3rd and a 1st to close it out. So this was a really close Grand Finals. A lot of ups and downs within the teams. A lot of people choking, a lot of people performing good. But yeah, I honestly think this is just a B tier win. I think it's just, you know, it was impressive. Dukes coming out of nowhere, winning. You know, it was something a lot of people didn't really expect. Also think it was, you know, just a basic Grand Finals. It was another Grand Finals that a lot of people had seen before. Another trio won at that. So I think B tier is fine for that. All right, so going on to Chapter 2, Season 8. This was a time period that I'm quite familiar with. This was another trio Grand Finals, and you know, I actually ended up winning this Grand Finals. This was with Muzz and Mero. We ended up landing Misty in Grand Finals, uncontested. You know, it was good. We played a good Grand Finals. We did well. It ended up going to our last game in order to win. Jamper had the opportunity to overtake us. All they had to do was just live in their game. I remember we were fresh off a reboot and they came running above us. They were so close to killing us, but they ended up backing up and leaving us alone. We had to get a few last second eliminations, get some extra placement just to push us above this. So this was a super close Grand Finals. We almost choked this, to be completely honest. So if I'm to put this on a tier list, I honestly would say this is B. I don't think it was anything special. I don't think it was anything crazy. All right, so going on to Chapter 2, Season 8, there was another Grand Finals, and this was Grand Royale. So this was fresh off of the win I just had with Muzz and Mero. We actually ended up dropping Muzz to pick up Dukes, who was, you know, a really good player at the time. Before we decided to play with Dukes, he sent me an entire Google Doc just giving reasons why I should play with him, why he was so confident we were gonna win together. It's almost like he manifested it in a way. But this was a crazy time period. This was Grand Royale, which was one of the biggest tournaments in Fortnite history as well, at least online. You know, this was just a well-played Grand Finals. Day 1. So day 1 we played okay. Day 2 was double points, so we knew we had to lock in. We knew at all costs we had to perform. You know, that is just what we did. Our day 2 was phenomenal. We played really well. We were consistent. When it came down to the end, we didn't choke. Impressive Grand Finals, I would say, just because of what we did in order to make this trio occur. If I'm honestly to say, also a back-to-back, I honestly think Grand Royale was A tier. I think that's guaranteed A tier. All right, so after Chapter 2, Season 8, we are going into a new chapter. This is Chapter 3, Fortnite. This Grand Finals Mero and I actually ended up winning. This was our back-to-back-to-back. This was one of those points in my career where I look back at and I was, I'm just very impressed with. I think we did really good. Yeah, this was just a really good grand finals. Yeah, I think we had 2 wins in a row or something. I mean, I've just played in so many grand finals. I honestly forget a lot of it at this point. This was a very competitive time period. I remember we had uncontested chonkers, which was a really good POI. We also had a Lambo every single game, so we were able to drive that into zone. We had a lot of pads. We had a lot of god loot. This was coming off of 2 FNCSs. I honestly think this is fair to put maybe bottom of B tier. I mean, just because this is the 3-peat, I feel like I can just put this maybe not bottom of B tier, but just B tier in general. So going on to chapter 3 season 2, we have Peterbot and Byla. All they did, they kind of just ran it down. They landed at the Collider, which was a really good POI. They ended up getting an AUG every single game. They had this rotational item that they could use in laggy lobbies. This was the beginning of Peter. Nobody, I think, expected Peterbot to win this FNCS just because the amount of inexperience on this team and just how random it really was. They were good, but I don't think anybody expected them to win. I honestly think this was just one of those times in Fortnite where it was another grand finals where one of the players were just super impressive. They had a really good performance and they just ended up winning. But yeah, I think if we were to put this on a tier list, honestly, Peterbot Byla, nobody really expected them to win this. They landed at the best drop spot though. They had an AUG every single game, which was crazy for Surge. I mean, I could say this is another fair just B win. It's just an average win, All right. So going on to chapter 3 season 2 grands, we have another duo event. This is fresh off of the Peterbot Byla win. This was a different meta at the time. This was grapplers, splashes. I believe there were pads in this meta as well. All right, so going into chapter 3 season 3, we have one of, if not the best grand finals of all time. This was a super close grand finals. I believe the meta was the spider grapplers. There might have been pads. There were splashes, minis, AUG for Surge. Commandment and Avery landed west side of the map. I forget the name. It was almost like a grotto type POI, and this was just insane grands. This is game 12 right here. Commandment's left as a solo. Everything's on the line. If they win this game, if they do good, they can win. And he gets a 2v1. He kills Jack and Nosh. He ends up having to solo clutch the final game. So this grand finals honestly hurts so much to look back at. Right here, all we need to do is live for one more placement point and we win this grands. We lost by a point. Commandment pulls off one of the best clutches in Fortnite history in a grands finals. You can see him drop down here. He gets another kill. He ends up getting a top 6 as a solo from half zone. They needed a good game to win this grands, and they ended up getting their good game from a solo clutch. Yeah, this is really sad. This was a sad one. Props to Commandment for playing so insane right there and just getting them that win. This is going to be our first S tier grand finals of all time. So going on to FNCS Invitational, this was fresh off of Avery Commandment's win. There were a lot of good people during this time period. This was a global LAN, so everybody from every region was able to participate. Drop spots were very important. There were balloons at the time, which would allow you to pretty much rotate wherever. People could sit on top of them, shoot you for Surge. There were kegs for shield. There was, there was just a bunch of stuff. Pads too. This was just a very interesting time period. There were a lot of good teams competing in here as well. So this grand finals actually ended up coming down to the last game. Vino and Cammy and Seti were all pretty much head to head here. I think Cammy was 30 points above Vino, but if Vino and Queasy played a good game, they could have won. But Vino and Queasy decided to actually contest them. So you see right here, Queasy killed one. He went for the repeat and he died to Cammy. Now this is game 12. This is the final of it. 360 points and 348 points. It's actually closer than I thought. All they had to do was play a good game, Vino and Queasy, and potentially they could have outplaced Cammy and they could have won. So you see right here, this is the 1v1. It all comes down to this. Vino pumps him. He tries to place a wall. You can't put a wall there, and Cammy hits the shot. And they end up winning Invitational purely off of that. And yeah, this was one of the craziest Fortnite moments of all time as well. Just for it to end this way, this was honestly insane. And yeah, this was one of the craziest lands. I honestly will put Invitational probably alongside S tier just because of the final game and how it went down and how iconic that moment was for Vino and Queasy and Cammy and Seti to fight off spawn. That was insane. All right, so going on to Chapter 4, Season 1. This is after Invitational, the Global Championship. This is a new chapter. A lot of people honestly weren't sure if Fortnite was going to continue to host competitive events after this. A lot of people thought Invitational was the end of Fortnite. So this was one of the most insane individual performances I think I've ever seen in a grand finals. You know, they just played phenomenally. I mean, they were doing a lot of things right, and they landed at Slappy Shores. This was Hammer season. You know, this was just prime Cold right here. He was one of the craziest players in the game. He was just doing everything. So this is 2v1 scenario. We're just gonna quick clip from the end game. Actually, I think they're both solos. This guy 100 getting the kill. But I honestly think Acorn Cold, I personally think that's an A tier win. So I'm gonna throw them in there. All right, so going into Chapter 4, Season 2, we have a Duos FNCS Finals. The winners of this were Edgy and Dukes. Interesting grand finals to say the least. Acorn and Cold were, I think, expected to win this one. It came down to the last game. There were a lot of people that were close to winning. They killed the team off spawn, I think, almost every single game, if not every game. You know, this was the first win for Edgy in his career after all the second places. There's not much to pick apart from this grand finals besides they were contested and had one of the most dominant off-spawn performances. Yeah, I mean, this was the first win for Edgy. This was the third win for Dukes. This is either a B or C tier. I feel like throwing it in the B tier just stacks all these on top of each other, but like, I mean, I think this is just a B tier because they had a 12-0 almost off-spawn performance. All right, so moving on to Chapter 4, Season 3. We have Agers and Kanata as the winners. Agers and Kanata have been known as great players throughout their entire careers. Kanata has never won a grand finals before this. I know there were rifts around the map. I think it might have just been a no movement meta by the looks of it. So in this grand finals, Kanata had an insane day one. They had a really impressive day one, and going into their day two, they actually ended up choking. Kanata and Agers, they just played an impressive grand finals. They landed at a really good drop spot. I feel like this is just another B tier win. It was definitely a close grand finals. It came down to the last game, but I think that's just another fair B tier win. All right, so moving on to the most recent FNCS. So we have the Global Championship, which was hosted in Denmark. Players from all around the world came together to compete and play. Cooper and Marrow ended up becoming your winners. But this was after Marrow had claimed to quit the game. He came back on LAN after having a bad LAN performance last time, which was with me, and he ended up actually winning. So crazy for them to win. I remember a lot of zones pulled west side. They landed a west side drop spot, but they did end up winning, and yeah, there were a lot of other good teams at the time. Seti, Cami, Queasy, Vino, a lot of people expected to do really well. Tayson was always up there as a good competitor too. You know, Malabuka, Thomas, Kanata, they were all conning each other. So yeah, I mean, this was honestly random. Nobody really expected Marrow and Cooper to win this. But they played Fortnite. They played the playstyle that Marrow loves the most. He just runs it down, gets kills, and just has good games. So yeah. So yeah, just because that's a LAN and just because of the circumstances leading into it, last second, Marrow, you know, deciding to play with Cooper after quitting the game and then coming out and winning this LAN, I feel like we're gonna have to give that an A. Okay, so I think after my final revisions, I think this is where I would put everyone. I know I changed a lot of stuff around. I just wanted to kind of fill these in a little, make it feel a little bit more balanced. Yeah, guys, this is my FNCS winner tier list. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and comment down below if you guys would change anything, where you guys would put people. I hope you did enjoy the video, and if you did, please make sure to subscribe. Also check out my other channel, Bugha Live, where I will be posting daily stream content and tournaments. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.